Hello, hello, hello. Okay, sorry, I was on mute, but I am unmuted now. Hopefully, you guys can hear me loud and clear. This is the Shadow Work Sessions about deception today. And we're going to be here and talk about deception today, family, and where deception comes into our lives. Hey, sis, how you doing today? I hope you are well. I hope you are well. Hey, 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 hey. I see y'all coming up in here. Hey, Sharon, Sandra. Hey, y'all. We are getting to our shadow work today. Now, today's shadow work, I want you guys to sit back, listen, take it all in, and then reflect and reassess, right? Because that's what we do here on Shadow Work Sessions. Sometimes it's interactive, and I may let you guys come in later on because this one might be a little long, okay? But it's needed because I got a lot of things that I want to go into detail about, plus show you a few clips and things of that sort, okay? Um, so it's many things, right? It's many things. But the main thing is us going into the messages um, about deception today. Okay. I have a PowerPoint, of course. Okay. Um, and this is my PowerPoint about deception that we're going to start out with, that I put together. Now, normally my PowerPoints are just to keep me on task and to also give you guys a highlight of some of the things that I do want to talk about and I do want you guys to take away. So you can take notes. And if you don't want to take notes in the mind. So in due time, you can apply this information. Okay. So deception, right? I know we've all had to deal with deception in some shape, form, or fashion. Okay, appreciate all help for us. Yes, right? And shadow work sessions is about all of us reflecting on our shadow selves. And a part of our shadow selves is deception. Not only having others deceive us, but us deceiving ourselves, right? So I'm going to talk about deception in many ways today. The sins, right? And how that came about. I'm just going to brush across that, right? Um, and the deception that we do to self, as well as what self was imposed based off of mind control, right? So by the masses, for the collective, we fall into that as well. Um, we've learned many, many things, family, about deception over my time of being on my spiritual journey and how much we've been deceived, right? And a lot of you really don't even truly know how much we have truly been deceived. I'm going to brush over at the end the beginning of that and what we were taught based off of my spiritual journey, my spiritual family, um, my spiritual teacher, right? The messenger that brought all the information to us as a collective, within the spiritual family that I started with years and years ago. Hey, Fatima. And everything I have seen played out and the ancestors have clarified, gave me confirmation of all of this as well as what I was taught. So I know what I know, right? And in this message today, and in Saturn energy, right? I think Saturn energy in Saturn in Pisces is, I know, or is it? I think it's, yeah, it's definitely a difficult energy to be in right now with Saturn in Pisces. Okay, that's very challenging. So we're gonna face a lot of this, right? Anyways, I don't want to get off into that, but I do want to stay on the course in reference of deception. So, family, I know a lot of you are thinking now about all the times you have been deceived or that you have actually deceived thyself, right? If you truly think about it, let's move into the definition and see exactly if what you think is deception truly is, right? So I'm gonna blow this up so you can see it, right? So as you can see, the true definition of deception, family, is a deliberate choice, okay, to mislead, you know? A lot of us have went through this in reference of relationships, you know, family situations, um, job situations, you know, even ourselves, right? But without prior notification and to gain some advantage or to avoid some penalties, right? And sometimes, if you look at that definition without prior notification, I think that is the worst in it all in reference of deception, right? Is not to truly have notification. You know, they always say, at least they could have told me, right? That's like the first thing we always start out by saying. But why would someone tell you they're going to deceive you? Or why would someone tell you they're going to betray you? Or why somebody would tell you they're going to try to take mind control from you? You know, no one would relinquish that type of information to you ever. Um, but it happens in reference of them trying to gain some type of advantage. We know that. And to avoid some things as well. You know, avoid to be wrong or avoid any type of costs or penalties or anything like that. That's why people definitely deceive or are deceitful, right? And the definition, not self-deception, delusion, you know, a pathological behavior, theater, falsehood due to ignorance or error. Okay, so there's many things that the definition of deception lies back on. Okay, but that is the main definition that you can find out there. Now we could put our own spin to the definition of deception, right? And how deep it can go, generational deep, right? Um, uh, you know, hidden, right? Trauma, drama, chaos, all of that in reference of deception, family. The power of deception is really real, and it starts with the mind, the brain, how this sparks some type of, you know, delusionary behavior, you know, demonic evil energy that is projected within on a spiritual aspect of it, because I like to give you guys the actual physical definition, but not only that, the spiritual definition or the spiritual experiences and things that we resonate with as spiritualists on our spiritual journey. The power of deception is real, and it starts with the mind. Okay. And it also starts with hurdles, right? Mountains that you have to climb. Um, but I do want you to understand it starts with self, right? So the main thing with this self-deception is harmful. Okay. And I've put up some words, right? And some definitions and some things here. If you can't see it, hopefully whenever you go back to viewing this, hopefully you can see it when I blow it up bigger, right? Um, and I can't see the chat, family, right now because I haven't blown up, but hopefully you can see it very big, right? But the first thing here is about self-deception, right? So deception we're going to talk about in many ways, I told you. So the first thing I want to talk is about self, because everything starts first with self, right? So self-deception is the process of lying to oneself without realizing about themselves and their reality. Remember, I tell you guys, it's always start with you, right? Knowing thyself. If you don't know thyself, then you are definitely going to deceive yourself, because you're going to doubt yourself. You know, you're going to abandon yourself. You know, you're going to feel weary within self. and you're going to have fear. So the ancestors is telling you in this definition, they provide unhealthy coping habits that stream or steam from our fears and insecurities. You're going to have a lot of insecurities with not knowing thyself, okay? That will bring on self-deception. Signs of self-deception. I'm just reading through the things that are here. Being in denial of reality. That's the main one that I see a lot, family, in reference of self-deception. Not understanding that something is reality. So you're living in a falsehood. You're not seeing things clearly, even with your two eyes. Although we tell you to look with your third eye, but you're not even able to see it with your two eyes. The reality of a situation, minimizing a problem, making it seem like it's not that bad, but it's actually a situation that you need to face head on, provide an abstract reasoning for failure. And sometimes, we're going to fail. That's a given, right? But sometimes that within that failure, you have to learn the lesson, or you'll keep repeating it and it'll become a repeated cycle. And you're not going to be able to get out of that loop if you get stuck into it, family. And that is insanity, right? When you do something over and over and over again without being able to realize I have to come off of this to break the chain, to break the cycle, right? So that's deceiving thyself, right? And not being able to recognize it is not having self-awareness. So signs of self-deception is about developing imposter syndrome, right? And so some of you may ask, you may have heard it before. I should have put the definition in here for you guys, right? But I'll give you the definition. Imposter syndrome is persistent feelings of inadequacy and self-doubts. That's imposter syndrome, which is basically like despite evidence of achievement. So an individual experiencing syndrome often attributes their successes to luck or external factors instead of giving themselves the actual praise of accomplishing that situation. That's one way of looking at it. It says the symptoms are negative self-talk, anxiety, and depression. Okay, sometimes I fall into the imposter syndrome as well, because you come in and out of these things, family. Sometimes I have the self-deception where I have to snap myself out of it and say, wait a minute, stop doubting yourself. You're powerful, right? It's easy to fall out of the whole situation of not giving self-confidence and courage and patting yourself on the back when no one else does, right? It's hard to do that. So the imposter syndrome is very real, okay? So, if you want to get more into that, to be able to recognize the signs of deception, please do, okay? The causes of self-deception, family, to better lie to others, okay? To better lie to others. I like that. So basically to be able to lie to others so you can help someone else feel some way because of how you want them to feel. So it's like you're wanting, you're taking up for someone else, or you're hiding emotions, right? Excuse me. Lower anxiety and stress levels, okay, causes self-deception as an act of self-defense or perseverance. Now, I see that a lot where people will defend themselves, right, that way. Try to not face reality because, it's a self-defense mechanism, right? And to have better relationships, okay? But harmful effects of self-deception is it can lead to negative self-talk and image, as we talked about with the imposter syndrome. Unable to handle reality, limits our possibility of growth, definitely, and weakens our social relationships. Okay, this is what self-deception can do to you. Now, I always like to give you guys solutions, right? So the solutions are here. How to stop self-deception, understanding our fears and insecurity. That's number one. What is making you in fearful or fear mode or fear of, right? The situation that's at hand, where you don't want to face reality, you don't want to face the truth. You know, you're pushing things to a side. You're doubting yourself. You're making yourself have anxiety. You're falling into a low vibrational state. You know, accepting feedback and criticism is also one of the things attached to helping you conquer your insecurities. Okay. So that goes back to self deception. These are the things that can help you conquer those things. These are the solutions. Checking in on our thoughts and views. This is why I'm telling you now. Self deception is something that can allow you to reevaluate and reassess, right? To change your thoughts and your perception and your views, and understand that it starts with you. Because if you have self-deception, then you're definitely going to receive self-deception. Because remember, it starts internal first, family, and then your external reflects exactly that. So you have to be very careful with the self-deception. Setting achievable goals, you know, start writing out some things. You know, I am going to give away a journal. Okay, that's one of the things I'm going to do today behind this message, because deception really can take us into some very, very distinct, traumatic energy that we will need to write things down, set goals, set your intentions, be mindful and aware, you know, but also be able to use that as an outlet to write down the things that you may feel insecure about, the things that you have self-doubt on, right? The things that may make you feel like you do have imposter syndrome, and why. You know, these are the things that you should be, you know, journaling and writing about and working through, you know. Open to learning about self in other worlds and cultures and things that affect your life, your living conditions, your home life. What is it that is affecting your stability, you know, your mindset, right? And is that mindset something that you learned? Because a lot of what we've learned and what we were programmed and what we were raised on, family, wasn't always right. It actually created and implanted seeds of self-deception, because that is generational. Okay. So I didn't include the first example because I didn't really like it. So I started with the 2 through 5. But these are some examples of self-deception. An alcoholic who believes that their drinking is very much under control. So you may say, you know, drink every day, and you say, oh, I got this under control. I just have a glass of wine and I have 3 beers every day. But, you know, they can stop whenever you want to. Mm-mm. That is drastic. And a lot of times that is us deceiving thyself, because you don't want to face what truly is making you and allowing yourself to drink like that. I had to deal with that in reference of drinking and smoking, mainly smoking, right? Because I drank, you know, a little bit, but I smoked daily. Okay. So I have not smoked in over almost 2 years. Yes. Okay. So I feel very good about that. You know, God is good. Let me just say that. That's how I know God is real, honey, because I gave up that smoking, the trees, okay? I gave up, you know, the alcohol. I do have wine here and there. I may have a, you know, socially, right? Or achievements, right? And I do like wine or champagne if I'm, you know, celebrating something, birthdays, holidays, you know, but drinking like I used to, no. Partying like I used to, no. Excuses I used to use, yes. Same as these for a lot of them. So that's why I chose these examples, because you can probably resonate with them as well. And sometimes it is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me. All right. A partner who believes that their spouse is loyal to them even after catching them with someone else. Using self-deception just to keep up the image of a happy married life. Now that is one that I see a lot. People deal with this not only being married, but even in relationships, right? Self-deception. Put your mind to, oh, it's supposed to be this way. No, it's not supposed to be this way. You know, it's not supposed to be this way. Hey, Ebony. Um, Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yes, yes. I am very proud of myself of not having that habit. But you know what I did? I asked the Most High and the ancestors to relieve me of it, family, and they did. I don't have the taste for it. I don't have the urge for it. So me being able to move past the trees, anyone can do it. Trust me, okay? Because I was a daily. Okay. Um, so yes, so the partner who believes the spouse, right? They believe the spouse, they believe the deception, they feel like they have to constantly receive that love, even though they're being deceived, but see, they're deceiving themselves. So that's what they're getting. See, that deception. So they're getting it back. See? And example 4, a couple who regularly goes out to party and have friends over all the time might feel that they are very social, when in reality, they do not enjoy each other's company and do not wish to address the problems between them. Because Lord knows the trees are hard to shake. Yes, they are. Yes, they are, Ebony. Hey, Ebony. Yes, that, yeah, 2 years. Yeah, yeah, family. It's I can't believe it. Almost 2 years. Yeah. So, family, listen to the example 4. Now, some people go through this even not even with couples, but even friendships, right? Where the example 4 says a couple who regularly goes out to party, family, and have friends over all the time, invite friends over all the time. But really, in actuality, the deception is, and the self-deception between the couple and themselves is that they really can't sit down with that person and say, we don't even really like our own company. That's why we have to be amongst other people. That's horrible. That's bad self-deception, right? So they need to check themselves. They need, first of all, check themselves first, right? Self-deception, work on self. And then, hey, Tantalus, and then they need to work with each other to see why it is that they have to constantly have outside friends and people over, or even having to go outside to be around each other. That's a problem. And example 5 is an employee who is unhappy with their current company does not seek a job elsewhere, given the reason that others have it worse and things will get better soon, when actually they are unsure about their ability to land other jobs, right? So this is one that a lot of people can relate to. A lot of people understand that, or they may feel that they can't get another position, they can't get another job. So they fight against it, when in actuality, it's about them facing their own traumas and their own situations to see why it is the unsure they feel like they can't land another job. And that resonates with me. I know for a fact that I feel like that in some cases because of self-doubt, knowing I need that. Before, I had all these certifications, family. I had like 7, 8 certifications at one time. And so I felt like I was, I had all that I needed to have. And then when those expired, I felt like I'm not going to be able to get nothing else. You know what I mean? So it's the things like that that are self-deception, when in actuality, yes, I can still get something without it. Because just because I don't have the certifications doesn't mean I don't have the experience. And so sometimes we have to check ourselves first with the self-deception and the doubt, and become confident again. And now I'm confident again in myself to also want to go back and finish and get more certifications again, right? Um, and sometimes it's just a monetary thing too, you know. So it's many different things that can sway us when it comes to self-deception, but the main thing is to go through the process of not lying to ourselves and not realizing the things and the reality of what you're sitting in today, right? And looking at it and analyzing it in multiple different ways. That is the gist of coming out of self-deception. Okay, understanding your fears and your insecurities. and accepting it. Acceptance is a big part of that. And actually taking feedback and criticism and asking and allowing help. That's another thing people can't do when they are deceptive of themselves or deceiving themselves. Is sometimes independence takes over where you feel like you don't need the help, when in actuality it's okay to take the help. Don't deceive thyself, because then you're harming yourself. You know what I mean? So think about all the different aspects of self deception. Okay, that's the first thing I wanted to bring to you guys first about self deception. We went over 3 different slides and a few examples of self deception. If you don't know, you have those examples here. Maybe they resonate with you or what you have seen around you. We talked about imposter syndrome as well around self deception. So I want that to resonate with you. I want you to journal about that when you're not here. Come back to this when you're feeling deceived or the self deception, and listen and go through these notions. All right. Now we're going to move into our second portion of deception, is mind control. Okay. Mind control is a major form of deception. Okay. Mind control. And I always talk to you guys about this on just about every video. I talk about the law of, I talk about the universal laws, right? And I talk about spirituality, and I talk about us as a collective, as a whole, right? And hey, young girls, and I talk about you know our country and our governments and how we're ruled and how everything is managed and how we are controlled as a collective. This is what we're going to talk a little bit about with the mind control, right? So what is mind control? Well, mind control, I put the definition up here for us, family. Mind control is definitely the ability to alter the way someone thinks, make them perform a task they would otherwise not perform. But the main thing I want you to take away from that definition is alter the way someone thinks, the perception, the reality, and put people in illusions. Okay. Literally take control of another person. You command everything they do or say. Okay. And if you think about it, that goes back to um, I don't know why I just lost the word. Not democracy, um, not diplomacy, dictatorship. That's what I wanted to say. Dictatorship, right? And so sometimes, family, we think we're in these Democratic and Republican and all these different parties and all this in reference of the government, but we're not. We are ran by a dictatorship, and it is called the U.S. government. Allegedly, I have to say that. I don't want to get in no trouble there, even though this is private. But I'm just saying. But we are ran by the U.S. government, right? Which is ran as a dictatorship right now. But that is also goes into literally taking control of other people. You see it right here. Mind control is where it starts, because we're all programmed to think and know we have to do this because they said so. So we're all the robotics within this whole universe, okay? In all shape, forms, and places, right? Not just our country, but other countries. But it's mind control. That's the only way to control the masses, right? But it's also a form of deception, to deceive those. You see? So this is the major form of deception. I had to start with self so you can check yourself. But now we got to look at the big picture. All right. Okay. So deception at its finest, programmed to be reprogrammed. Okay. So I put this here because I want you to look at the mind. I want you to understand that everything is controlled based off of your mind, family. That's why it's the first universal law. Okay. All is mental, and we're all connected by this. So in this depiction, you see out of my control. right? And so I want you guys, when you're doing your journaling and when you coming back and you're reflecting on this video in reference of deception, I want you to really think about the things that are out of my control, out of your control, out of my control, the past, the future, the actions of others, the opinions of others, what happens around me externally, what others think of me, the outcome of my efforts. Hey, T Rose, how others take care of themselves. That's out of your control. It's actually the control of the Most High and your ancestors. Source, right? That's all that controls any of that, family. But what you're in control of, the in control is within. That's why you see it inside of the brain, in the mind, in your head. What you're in control of, in my control, is my boundaries, my thoughts, my actions, the goals I set, what I give my energy to, Ashe, and how I speak to myself, and how I handle challenges. Also, how you speak to others. So, those are all colorful, so you can be reminded of what you have control over, right? So, you can always snap a picture of this, take notes of this, write this down, put it on your desk if you need to. This depiction is what you have control over, which is all within, okay? What's outside of you are the external vibrations that you need to seek alignments, right? And that's the things that we ask for mercy and understanding and all of these things from the ancestors, right? The things that are out of our control. But what we do control the outcome of is you, right? Me, right? And those are the things you see internally, okay? So I want you to understand, sometimes we have been programmed to think that we can control all of these things, but the only thing you control is your own mind and your own thoughts. And sometimes we allow and give this away without paying attention to the things that we should be absorbing, or we should be reprogramming ourselves from being programmed, okay? Because we have all been programmed. All right. It is just the way it's been, because the doctrine was lost. So how would you know? Right? We're gonna talk about that. But this is why we have to talk in reference of being reprogrammed, family. Because we all did not know at one point in time that we were being mind controlled, because then that wouldn't be mind control if you knew. Okay. That's a part of the deception. That's a part of the illusion. That's a part of the matrix. Matrix, right? Matrix, right? So, yes, all of these things. The magicians is very clever. So, I want to talk about sin, okay? The first full-fledged deception that we were taught, right? And that makes all the sense, right? Because we always talk about the sins, the sins, the sins. Well, sins comes with deception and being deceived and the betrayals and all of these things, right? Because as it shows here, sin, right, is lawlessness, right? Being unlawful, right? Unrighteous, right? And that goes back to even the definition, right? So I put that here for you guys so you would understand what this is telling us in reference of our let me move this. What this is telling us around, sin, right? So sin is an offense against reason, truth, right, consciousness. Okay. It is utterance, a deed, a desire of contrary to the external law. Okay, so what does that mean? It is contrary to the universal law, what we are governed by. It is a offense against the Most High. Saying no to God, to love, to personal growth, and to others is a sin. It is evil, intentionally committed. It is bad, free human decision. All of these things is the definition in reference of a sin. And it could be many other things that you may look at and think of in reference of sin. Now, as you can see, I have included here in reference of the doctrine, right? Serves no purpose in itself, but it is indispensable to have one if only to avoid being deceived by the false doctrines. Hey, Omnini. So with this message that I put here on this, about sin, is because I wanted you guys to know that there was a doctrine, right? We wouldn't have known about it because it was not told or shown, you know? We learned about this with the knowledge. And we'll tap into this at a later date, but just know that the deception comes from these things. And you see that apple there. As people have been deceived by the Bible, by religion, right? Deception is very strong when it comes to control, because that is another form of control as well. Religion, all right? And it goes all the way back in reference of what they tell people and how they maneuver the stories and change the stories, change the characters, change the people, change the deities, right? So you think you're learning about several different people across different religions, and they're the same person, just with different names, or the same energy, or the same deity, or the same gods and goddesses, or the same stars or fallen stars. So, with that being said, that message is to let you know a doctrine serves no purpose in itself, but it is indispensable to have one if only to avoid being deceived by false doctrine. So that message is to say, if you don't have the doctrine, you can be manipulated and naive to the fact and be shown a false doctrine that will manipulate the mind with the mind control, when in actuality it started with the sin. Okay? So that's truly what that message is saying about the false doctrines that we all have been led by over the years, generation to generation, from reincarnation to reincarnation, family. It is a repeated cycle of insanity. But it all starts from the first lie, right? Which is the first sin. First sin of deception, family, was incest. Incest. The forbidden fruit, right? That's the deception that a lot of people don't know, right? And so we were taught, our mouths was wide open too. Okay. But it makes so much sense. And if you go to your ancestors, go to your ancient ancestors and ask, tap in, allow the spirit to guide you and to tell you and to confirm it, because mine has. Okay. So I wrote up here in reference of just brush over some of the things that we learned about sin, right? And being deceived, right? And so the first sin is incest. That's the first deception. And a lot of us haven't had this happen, but molestation, right? Sometimes by family, right? Sometimes by others. That's another sin. It's very close to incest, right? But the first was in Central Africa, which goes back to the story that they gave in the book about Adam and Eve. His grandfather and granddaughter is the real apple, the children, the child, okay? Child is the most innocent thing here in this life. It's life. That is life. That's why when you get rid of that life, it is a major sin in reference of execution. Okay? Makes all the sense, comes full circle, family. So I wanted to bring that up. It's against nature. It started with all these, that's what started all these worldly sins, family, with the fallen ones. I wanted to brush over this so you have the knowledge, you have the wisdom, and you have the understanding of just this in a nutshell. This is a small nutshell of it, okay? It's a lot more to this. It's the keys to the soul is what we were taught, right? But I'm just brushing over it to show you the real deception, okay? And so we are separated by sin, not by color. You see? That's why you shouldn't look at people's color. The sin in the soul, that's what you should measure things by, never by somebody's color, family. We don't do that. We don't do that because we are all connected. That's as the universal law. That's the first one. If you don't know nothing else, you know that one. Okay? So mind control and deception has created the division and the hate. Okay? So this goes back to the major deception, right? Of not knowing your bloodlines by your blood types. We were taught this a while ago, right? Your bloodline and your blood types per the lost doctrine. And I have to say that because it goes back to the false doctrines that you've been fed all your life, right? You've been fed all your life because I was fed it all my life as well. I know. Right? Speak by experience. I told you I don't speak by, something we just don't know, right? So that is truly your lineage, your bloodlines, your blood type, where you truly came from originally, okay? These are the things you should know. And we'll talk more about this. So don't be deceived. The real Genesis was then. We are now in Revelations. We are now in Revelations. That's why everything is being revealed. And you have a lot of revelations that's coming about. You have a lot of people coming online. You have a lot of people that are tapping in because these are the days. This is the reset. See, they didn't give you anything at the Revelations, huh? Yeah. That's the real deception. So now that's why you wonder why people are lost. And for those who know the latter and go back to the latter, look at Pisces and look at what the inflictions are. To be lost, to not know your path, right? And the trumpets and the seals and all those things that we were taught. Look at that and look at where we're coming into now, right? That they always say that starts a new astrology year. But look at what it is. It's a new into Saturn for how many years, right? But we don't know what's after Revelations because that's not what the book gave you. So then what do you do? So that's just something I wanted to bring to you guys' attention because these are the things that I think about a lot. And I study a lot, right? But I study the latter and then I study other things too. I have studied a lot of different religions just to learn, right? And ask questions, right? That's how you learn. You have to research. You have to do the groundwork and then you need to do the energy work. Right? You need to tap in with your ancestors, tap in with these realms and so forth, right? It's real. It truly is, So I want to stop with the presentation there. But I do got one more slide, right? This is just a funny slide, but I do want y'all to listen to Bobby Hemmett, right? So I know he cussed a lot, so please excuse his cussing. I don't do a lot of cussing and things like that. Back in the day is when he was doing a lot of his lectures. So I want you guys to listen to a piece of his as my outcome to kind of give you the notion of why some of us go through the things that we go through, not some of us, but most of us on our spiritual journey, he put it in a good sense to made me think in real, and not really realize, but put confirmation, clarification there, right? Um, so I'm gonna play that after this. Okay, so I wanted to read you this little like, I used to read these all the time. They used to be in like the newspaper with Garfield and all the comedy that used to be in the back of the newspaper with the little, jokes. Well, this one is more or less about deception, how to avoid deception, or this is what it was under, how to avoid deception. So it says, I need some data from an unreachable guy named Ed. What should I do? He's talking to the little pet here, right? And he said, just make up a bunch of data like everyone else does. He said, just make it up, right? And then the dude say, everyone else does that? He said, are you doubting my data? So think about that. He telling him to just make up something because that's what everybody else does. And then when he questioned it, then the person that telling him to make it up says, you're going to question me? So yes, you need to question everybody. You need to question everything, family, because even what you've been told and shown, you need to question, because it could be deceiving. It could be an illusion. You see? So that is how you avoid deception, by questioning everything. If you don't question everything, you live blindly, you live blindly. So you must open your eyes, and not your two eyes, but your third eye as well. And you must wake up, family. When people say wake up, what do they mean? They mean wake up. Don't be zombified into just the illusion, okay, of thinking that everything is as it is seen and heard. You must tap in and go within. That's why we tell you to meditate. Listen to the voice of your ancestors, those that came before you, those that are known and unknown, that can walk you through this situation, right? Because nothing is more common on earth than to be deceived and to no to than to deceive and be deceived. I love that. Nothing more is common here in this 3D than to be deceived, family, and be deceived. All right. So I wanted to play you guys. I think I'm gonna have to play it on my phone because I cut off some of this unless I can find and see when the timestamp was on here, but I don't think I know the timestamp. So I'm gonna just have to play it to you on my phone. And that right, yes, all this is really lining up with what I was saying to self for my birthday. It was Sunday this year. I really have to work on me. Yes. The deception, right? Please do. But anyways, I want you guys to hear this, what Bobby Hemmett was saying. Yes, and happy birthday to you, young girls, belated rather. I want you guys to listen to this. This was called A Journey Through the Shadows. Okay. And this is what he said. Wait. Hold on. Let me see if I can start it. Okay, start it for me. So basically, all in all, he was telling people that, you know, and I hope you could hear him, right? I hope you could hear him, where he was talking about the movie Fight Club. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Fight Club, but he was saying how Brad Pitt was in the movie Fight Club, and the movie Fight Club was about, him coming through or getting past or out of the material world. But he was talking about how pretty much, you can lose it all, right? You can lose everything, in reference of those that are going through a spiritual journey. A lot of times this happens, right? Because it's the split of the deception of the material world to the spiritual realm, and being able to ascend in the spiritual realm. Sometimes, excuse me, family, sometimes it doesn't connect. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes things will start to fall away, right? And sometimes you have to let go to ascend. Sometimes these worlds don't connect. And that is also another part of the deception of being able to have, now they say, hey, Miss T, um, they do say, you can be, spiritual and abundant. That is very true, right? But a lot of times, those that are the most spiritual, they have a lot of things that come up against them that'll try to pull them back or out. And I always call it ascension tension. They don't tell you this, but I always say don't be deceived to feel like it's not something that is a part of your journey. Okay. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to share. I hope that this gave you some outlook to this. I love you too. Love y'all. I hope this give you some a different perception. That's what this is for, family, to give you a different perception of deception. Okay. So you can look at self, but you can also look at how the mind is controlled. And then you can think about the sins and how deceived we've been from the beginning. Okay. And how now in Revelations, what is to come. Okay. Will we still be deceived? Or will we take our power back and no longer allow ourselves to be in the illusion of the matrix? Right? So I love all of you guys. And I'm just so happy that I'm able to share the presentation with you guys today. And that you're able to understand multiple ways of looking at mind control, and that you understand where that sin originated from and how we were deceived from the beginning of time. All right. So this is the message. This is the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding. All right. To gain the power, right, and move forward with what we need to know. Let's see what y'all talking about in the chat. Your emergency reading made me step back and rethink and let go. Thank you for being there for me. You're welcome, love. You're welcome. I'm so happy that I was able to do that. And happy birthdays to young girls. Happy birthday to young girls, for sure. Love you too, sis. And I love you. Love all of y'all, man. Y'all, for real. For real. Y'all already know, right? But family, that is Shadow Work Sessions today. Deception. Remember, if you're going through any type of deception, right, come back here, read through the things that, we talked about in the presentation, and really sit and think about how overall we've all been deceived, and we've been deceived in multiple different ways, even in our love, our money, and in the collective as a whole. But it starts here, family. Like I always tell you guys, never let them get your mind, because if they get your mind, they got you. Okay? I love you guys. Peace. Much love to you. Much love, family. I love you all. Thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Much love, family. Peace.